All right. Good morning, folks. Welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk workshop here this Tuesday morning, July 25th. Have to get track of my calendar there, but great to see all of our students and members alike here inside our live trading room. First, Lawrence, we have Grant, we have Adam, Larry, we had Ravina before, Barbara before, Rod, Bell, Michael, Warren, John, Elizabeth, all of our members and students inside our live trading room. Great to see all of you there, and great to have all of us back perhaps on social media. If you're joining us on our YouTube stream, Facebook Live, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc., at Cyber Trading U, look to subscribe and follow us on all of our social streams. But great to have us here across the board. Right now, we have a nice runner. APLD is still pushing on up right now. The stock ended up reporting good earnings yesterday. So, hey, folks, for all of us inside the trading room, you should know that we are in the middle of earnings season. We started it back from even like a week ago or two, from the end of 2 weeks ago with the banking stocks. And then obviously now heading into this week, we have the Fed meeting. But on top of that, we have a lot of these larger cap companies reporting or otherwise stocks that just we're familiar with. So APLD, let me ask us, for any of our longtime students here, or at least traders that were with us, perhaps, you don't need to be a long time, but even go back to mid-May, a little after Cinco. What happened on APLD? Well, of course, it popped. Does anyone remember what sector APLD is in? Does anyone recall, what stock this ended up trading with back, a month or so ago? Because, of course, we were familiar with it back then. Anyone recall what type of stock this is? JIT says a tech stock. Definitely on the right page there. Definitely on the right page there. What sector has been very hot of late? Of course, the tech. And that is it. But AI, right? This is an AI company. And with that, once the company C3 AI ended up making a big pop, more so going back into the May time here, once it rebroke and pushed up. Some other AI companies moved with it. So if you recall, we had others like BBAI. We had, my trade station is very slow today, mind you. I'm realizing that as we head into Traders Talk. We have the SOUN trade. I don't know if I want to keep jumping around right now with how slow trade station seems to be pulling up data right now. GFAI, I think that you catch my drift, but APLD was one of them. And for that reason, a lot of us here are very familiar with it. Sam asking, didn't it trade with AI? Certainly did. It's not 100% correlation. You can't hold your breath guaranteeing it's going to make the same exact move. And then on top of that, well, this company reported company-specific news, earnings. So it's not as if other AI companies are really going to go with this. This is just more a company-specific play dating back to yesterday. So, of course, it's running right now. But let's actually unzip this trade really from yesterday morning and then kind of carry over to seeing what levels work best for today, for this morning's market open. Of course, it's easy to say it popped yesterday morning, it topped off around here and then pulled back, and then it moved up higher. But folks, if trading was that easy for you to actually look to take those trades as quickly as you could think about it, none of us would be here. John, myself, Ryan, Sam, Joyce, Jith, Barbara, none of us would have the need to be here if trading was that easy. That's where we have to ask, okay, well, of course it popped and dropped, and then today it moved up, but where were the best levels? What were the best levels that you could have focused on heading into the market open today? And then from there, focusing in really more on our strategy, the mechanics of getting into a position, breaking through a big level on the way up. We have a bunch of emails that came in as well, folks, just from students like Jith, Peter, and I think also one from Catherine. But if you have any other questions, folks, for all of us here live, send over a quick email, josh@c2trading.com. That's my handle. Just any questions or comments that you have, feel more than free to shoot me over a quick chat there. I'm going to post that inside the YouTube stream here at the same time. And actually here, I got Danny from Mr. Top Step joining us right now on Facebook today. There we go, Danny. Welcome aboard. But here is my email address. If you are Danny or any one of us just joining us right now, just josh@c2trading.com is the handle, though. So any questions that you got, feel free to send over my way. But with this, though, hey, let me ask us, for John and Kathleen and Ravina and Barbara and all of us here, where are we more likely to find the iceberg orders? We talked about this just less than 24 hours ago in class. We really did. No joke. Like in our introduction to level 3 class yesterday in the phase 1 stock course, we talked about it. There we go. Ryan, Pablo, great to see Pablo here, and John and Barbara all saying, and Ravina, 50-cent levels and whole numbers. especially the more expensive it gets, you go whole numbers. This is still kind of cheap. So I would still kind of include and factor in the 50-cent incrementals as well. So, we'll give a little respect to 950 there, even though it chopped around it, going into the morning yesterday. $10 as not just a whole number, but one of the biggest whole numbers to focus on, a decade type of level. That's a key psychological to work off of. All right, give me a sec. I'm just fixating my book map here for us right now. Of course, this APLD trade is currently on the move. It's on the run. But if we actually rewind back to yesterday morning, we were calling it out in pre-market. It was moving in pre-market, meaning that you had the time to look at level 4 and see not just where the assumed levels were, but where the actual levels were on this. So this is actually over 24 hours ago from last morning in pre-market. Well, first off, we'll focus on like the horizontal lines that go across the page here. The largest numbers that correspond with these horizontal lines, those are the ones that you want to focus on. So for reference, notice right here, there is about 10,000, 11,000 shares on the ask. This is, a sell order for about 11,000 at 980. So I'm going to write down 980 as a key level. I think that you could already know where I'm going with that price. But outside of that, let's see. Well, right before the market opened, I think this order actually got pulled from the book. Notice it went from like orange to like kind of like a bluish, darkish hue. Order actually got pulled, but it was out there for so long. Let's give respect to that. That's actually more than what was here at 980. It's about 11,000 plus shares on the offer at 920. Okay. So I'll tell you, there's other orange lines that go across here, but we're more inclined to follow the ones that are the darkest shade of orange red, but more so, of course, equating to that, the largest orders. So the 920, the 980. If you want to go low here, 730. If it drops off and tanks, well, 730 technically is a big support. I think it's easy to say, though, between you and I, that APLD did not hit 730 yesterday morning once the market opened. So I'm not going to plot that level. It's more just to plot 920 as a potential level to work off of, whether it be resistance or support. I'm going to actually remove the line from 950 just for now, because I think you know where I'm getting to with this guy here, or this gal right there. But you could just see from pre-market that was a key iceberg level heading into the open. It was out there on level 4. So if you took the time to plot certain levels here, like 920, of course, then the 980. Well, if we look back to yesterday morning, I think that you could see that this ended up topping right off at 980 once. It pulled back and then it moved back up again, tried to break out again. But given how long it was since the first actual test of that iceberg level, you got to give it a respect even here. I know it's breaking above these little chart tops here, but this is actually a great example. Just shoot from the hip, because so many of us focus on chart levels, tops and general strong levels from the chart. Of course, the stronger the actual top or bottom is over a period of time, I give it a ton of respect. Like 976 or so, here it was basically holding underneath 975, 976 generally for about 18 minutes. That's a damn long amount of time. Well, is 976 the big level, or is it 980? 980 to me is the bigger level of the two, because that's where the iceberg order was from pre-market. It ended up hitting that price earlier after the open, like a false breakout. It broke above it, then it pulled back, and then of course it continued again. So perhaps the more it nipped it and gnawed at it even from here, well, from that stage, perhaps you can try and look for continuation. Let me ask us really quickly, Grant, Joyce, Kathleen, etc., all of us here live, what time do we typically expect reversals? Good segue for a water break there. What time do we typically expect reversals here within the morning? Yeah, around 10:15, 10:30 Eastern. And for anyone on West Coast time, Pacific time, 7:15, 7:30, Joyce, right? Perfect. So, hey, I mean, for as much as this had pumped up already from the market open, it's easy to say, but if it's not going to break higher here, the probability of it reversing is much higher. It's not a guarantee, but the probability is high. And that's exactly what we focus on. High probability. What happens more often than not? So, hey, the more it nips and gnaws at that 980 level across the morning, there's a better chance. But Just like we always teach here in Traders Talk, we teach it in class. This is like one of my catchphrases here. If I ever run for president, this should be my campaign slogan. When a stock breaks through a big level, Sam, Lawrence, Charles, etc., all of us here live, what are we expecting shortly after? It's a very simple answer. It has nothing to do with trend. What you hope for it to do has to do with trend. But you're expecting generally a big move. So, of course, it popped 980 again here. I would have been extremely hesitant to expect continuation. So it's easy to say it broke over 980. Well, what happened shortly after, folks? Not just that it went down, not just that, but it made a big move. It made a damn big move off of that big level, didn't it? So that's where you always have to cross your T's, dot your I's in the sense of false breakouts. If it's going to break above a big level and you jump in, and especially if you're close, right, tight above that level, well, you're doing for the most part, what you need to do to take a trade. But the last part is what happens after you get in, and that's setting the stop. You always have to make sure you set your stop very tight under that big important level that it just busted above, because you're expecting that big reaction shortly after. It's simply put. So, we'll go over a couple of examples of that in just a moment. But hey, once more, folks, another, catchphrase, not really a Josh line, but more just general charting principles. When a stock breaks above resistance and it freaking runs off of it, it flies off of it, I would like to think that initially resistance should become what, folks? And to answer Jith's question here, should the stop be set at a price like 975, for example? Well, on that exact test, I would not have taken it, because just to reference, the last time it actually kissed 980 was here. From here to here is like an hour and a half. That's way too long. You got to wait for it to, retest more and more this exact price. To answer your question, in terms of the actual price you would want to set a stop at, generally, give or take a few pennies there, every stock has its own unique levels that you want to work off of, but roughly speaking, like 5 or 10 cents just in between there, depending on the order book and what it actually looks like. When a stock breaks above resistance and runs off of it, resistance should become support, right? Well, hey, look what happens here. Of course, this flew after the market opened up. Well, it didn't pull back to 920 perfectly, but it pulled back to the next support, and that was the whole number at $9, and it broke under it, because look what happened. It nipped under it by 2 pennies and back over. Under, over, entry, big move. I mean, that's easy to recite after the fact, right? It's easy to kind of look at this after the fact and say, well, of course that happens. Hey, I mean, for Jith and Grant, Joyce and Sam and Kathleen and Ryan and all of us here, we got like 120 of us here live inside our live trading room currently. You folks are here more so than not every day, every week, right? Even if you miss it live once, I'm sure you catch the recording, and you don't need to watch them all to memorize all of this and to retain it all. This is all really kind of just the same information every week, just on different trades. So the more that we see it, then the quicker we should be over time to apply it and to be quicker to react to it. Oh, that's right. Okay, it's pulling back here. It's pulling back. Okay, we still got time until 10:30 here. So maybe there's a chance to see support build. Hey, the stock was coming off of good news. So for any of my, traders out there that look to read up on the company more and what the company does and the news and this and that, there's a catalyst. So, whatever the catalyst is, that to me is enough for me to say, okay, well, I'm sure other traders out there that care more about it are going to check, and more eyes are going to catch on to this trade. So it gives it a chance. It gives it a possibility. Now, let's just hypothetically say if this failed to bounce nicely here, if it failed to flip at minimum into support, if it failed to hold this at least as support and then came down, then you're looking at a break-even trade. You're looking at it like a small loss or a break-even trade at that. You're not getting that big move, it seems like. Easy to say, of course. It ended up providing for that good reaction, that big move shortly after from 9. And then here, it's actually a very good example where perhaps 920 could have been support actually as it pulled back, but you would need to see it go under over here and then really go way higher back up if you wanted any sort of bullish momentum. Because again, in terms of at least little chart levels, for right now, let's show a tiny amount of respect to, I guess, what built here at 927. This built out as like a somewhat strong level here on the chart. Well, it sliced it here. That's a bad sign. So if it's really not going to sling from 920 right on this candle, that's bad news. So it's, worth an attempt, but just like we said before, if it's not going to make that big move shortly after, guess what? It's going to make a big move shortly after. So you don't want to be on the wrong side of that trade, right? Now, with that in mind, of course, it ended up pushing back up once more today. So let's just say if you had this on your side list for this morning, it wasn't as active in pre-market. So I wrote it down on my side list, but I had no lines set on this chart for this morning. All of these lines are lines that I'm plotting with you live right now for the first time. So let's jump back to Bookmap here. We'll jump back to level 4 at least, and we'll take a look overall at what happened on this trade, like from yesterday, and we'll see, where the best levels really are to plot for this morning's trading. So 10, of course, big level, 80,000 share iceberg order out there on the ask. Your opening bell print is at 813. That's for the entire week. That's the weekly open price. So I do want to at least recognize that and plot that. Obviously, it didn't pull back there as much for this morning. We'll take a look in just a bit. That 980-ish is more the iceberg level that we had. What I will say, though, is that for as much as 975 built out here, it definitely shows like a lot of volume filled at the ask at 975, 980. So if it could break that price, then you definitely have a nice runner there, or a potential runner, especially if it could break 10. But other than just saying that, your closing print from yesterday, this is something you'll keep an eye on. About 127,000 shares actually got filled at the closing price yesterday at 878. So I'll just write that down. Here's something interesting, just a little food for thought. This is just interesting to see. Like, what was the intent? I don't have the answer to. Certainly, they ran it up higher today. But you had all of these big icebergs here. Fausto and I were talking about this in the audio broadcast yesterday inside our room. Every 10 cents, you're looking at like a big iceberg of first like 55, 56K. And then they got even bigger, double that, like 100,000, 107, 101,000. That does not show too often. So, what I was hypothesizing, because that's all it was, if it were to pull back and drop, then it would be interesting to see it crash into a good portion of this web and then maybe sling back up over time. I don't think that happened in full, really, right? This just kind of bounced up heading into the close, and then much higher it went today. So, this just, I wanted to show you because you probably caught it on the bottom of my screen as I was finishing up that review. And it's just like kind of odd. You don't really tend to see this price action too often. So obviously looking at what happened afterwards here, perhaps that's something we could take note of for future reference. And I'll go into this in just a moment too. You see that. So for this morning, there is nothing that stands out here. There is next to nothing that stands out here. Iceberg at 8, but it doesn't pull back that low. You have one up top here at 11 from like 97 or 9,300 shares. So there's, an order at 11. You could say there's a smaller little guy up top there at 1063. Obviously 10 we know is a key level anyway. There's nothing here though. There's nothing there that really interests me. Now let's get to this because, well, quite similar to those larger icebergs that we had all of yesterday on the bid side. Check this. This is funky. We got these like 5,100 share orders out there every 5 cents. And these are on the ask. These are on the sell side right here. So, I didn't catch this just right as the market opened up, but obviously you could see over time it ended up breaking through this entire wall of resistance. And essentially this area here over time became support before it ran higher. But let's actually pull this back right now. We'll kind of jump back to it one more time. 904 is the opening bell print. And 878 was the closing bell from yesterday. I just want to note that. Okay, so let's just at least plot a couple more lines here. We'll try and even simplify it a bit for us right now. So 904 was the opening bell print from this morning. Make that yellow. 878 was the closing print from yesterday. Also make that yellow. We'll start with that. I don't want to plot all of these right now. Let's just start those two lines. So simply, once this ended up breaking back over the opening print this morning, opening price was 904. So it pulled back at first, made a giant drop down, just kind of a sharp drop, and then it slung back up. So effectively, within the first 3 to 4 minutes, once it rebroke over the level, it flew. And when I say rebroke, what I want to bring up is that, that pop ended up happening in the first 3 or 4 minutes, I think, of the open. Let's plot a line here. 904. So you have right here, big print here that came out right at the market open. And on the first test of it as resistance, it popped and dropped it very slightly. But still, though, you want to follow it on the next break there as it breaks back above. All right, well, should you look to jump in, you're doing everything that you need to on the entry, especially with it over 9 already at this point. So we know 9's a big level from yesterday. And with 904 here, it's about 100,000 share block print that got filled. Just for size here, folks, just for reference. We actually have a really big iceberg at $10 up top here. When the market opened up, this grew to be about 71,000+ shares on the offer. That's huge. Could I just ask us a really quick question? What's larger, 71,000 or 100,000? Let me know. It's a simple question, right? Because at the end of the day, obviously, we know the 100,000 is bigger. We know that. But if that's the case, and if we're giving that much respect to the iceberg at 10, then are you giving respect to the opening print here at 904 when the market opens up? Because if not, then, hey, look what happened shortly after. Once it rebroke over the big level, it provides that opportunity. That's all we're asking for on the entry. That's all we're asking for on the entry part of it. From that stage, of course, it ended up continuing to pop up a little bit higher. Hey, we ended up having a big iceberg from yesterday's trading. Remember that iceberg at 920? Well, this became a much better level to enter off of across the morning. There were a few points where it stabbed under it and dropped a little bit, but it provided that entry if you're looking for support. If you weren't able to jump in yet on this trade, well, hey, 920, that big level that we had from yesterday, it finally became a great support. It ended up going under and over and generates a great entry for you to take that trade looking for that higher high over time. Looks like it took a little bit to get that higher high, but thankfully it held strong. And then from there, again, just like we talk about, especially after the first 5 or 10 minutes of the morning, not 100%, the case here, folks. If it was always the case, then none of us would be here. But much more often than not, high probability. Well, if we're expecting reversal time to be 10:15 in the morning or 10:30, hell, even 10 o'clock. Well, by the time it ends up shaking off a support here, what time is it? 9:45, 9:50. So in theory, you have about 10, 15 minutes, if not more than that, to look for that big move shortly after. So it's all about having faith in your levels at the end of the day. For any of my traders here that ask me questions on stocks or review trades with me, just one-on-one in coaching, you might go over the trade with me and say, all right, so I took it from this level right here, and I almost want to stop you right in your tracks. Obviously, I want to be respectful, but I want to stop you in your tracks and say, well, is that a level? What led that price to be a level? And a lot of times I ask solely out of curiosity. You might have a super legit reason to give me, and you're on the ball. Bingo. It's just solely out of curiosity. I ask it first. But there are times where I'm reviewing a trade and I clearly myself see there ain't no level there. You're not really trading off a big level. So the more that you really grasp what a big level is and really how effective one price could be over another, then and then at that point, you're going to have a much better ability to react, because the more often you're here kind of seeing the same motions play out, well, I feel that your understanding of the mechanics of entering, shortly after it breaks through a big level on the way up. And I think that you're pretty fond of, all right, I should make a big move shortly after. I think the real key is knowing where to get in from, the big important levels that you should have taken the time to plot, if you're looking to trade a specific stock. There are stocks always that look to pop up on our radar that, catch us off guard, and I have to plan out my levels quickly. Well, hey, a lot of us get here at their desk at 8 o'clock in the morning, if not earlier. I see Grant and John chatting away as early as 7 o'clock. So I know that you're at your desk. I know that you're at Bookmap looking at these levels, and that's the time where you should take to plot all of this out. You shouldn't be doing this right when the market opens, especially if you've been watching trades for the last hour and a half prior to the open. It's like not studying before the test is given out. If we know the answers to the test before the test is given, it's going to be easy to get a passing grade at least, right? Now that's, a little different compared to, risking our hard-earned money and trying to follow a fast-moving stock and having emotion, factor into our mindset. But hey, that's my logic. If there's a stock that I'm not prepared to trade, even if it's a level 1 stock, I'm not going to be as inclined to just like jump headfirst into the pool. Actually, oh geez, I just reminded myself. I was on a coaching call, a coaching session yesterday with one of our students. It rolled off the tongue well. I don't know where I thought of it. I'm a weird person to think of it, but think of it this way, folks. You don't want to jump headfirst into the pool, into the deep end of the pool, let alone the pool in general, because a lot of times, if you don't know how to swim, you're going to look to jump pretty quickly, but you might hit your head on the concrete before you land in the pool. So you want to make sure that you're very understanding of why a stock is making the exact move that it's making. And it always ties back to the larger order levels that the stock is following from day to day. So over time, that 920 became a hell of a price to watch, and it allowed it to make the move up higher. Well, here we go. Let's even just focus on the same levels that we just took the time to plot. We have that 980 from yesterday and 975 or so. So the more times that it nips and gnaws at that, I'd be led to believe it's bound to make that pop and that big move shortly after. So at first, of course, it ended up testing it, and it took some time. It wasn't a breakout right away. If anyone had jumped in on this sequence, you're taking a small loss or a break-even trade at that, really. It's not making that big move here at this time. Well, what happened? It ended up shaking right back down rather fast. So if you're in at 981 here on this, let's just say green bar, red bar, doesn't make a difference. Just, hey, at least you waited a few candles first and you jump in. All right, did everything you could have done, at least with trying to look for continuation up to 10. But if it's not giving it to you, then there's no sense in holding on here as it shakes down to 950, if not much lower. But of course, the more it ends up nipping and gnawing at this price, it looks like just shortly prior to 1030, it led to a pop. It held as support. And thankfully, it continued. So what we hope to see is the move upward, of course. That's what makes us money. But, hey, if it doesn't make that big move, it needs to hold over our big level at minimum. If it can't even do that, just get out of the trade. Not worth it. All right, so let's actually go through a couple of things in the chat board here. I got a couple questions on social media on top as well. Then we'll jump to emails too. So from one of our trial members here, Coldip, I believe, asking, how do you get access to Bookmap? So I know Fausto had mentioned this earlier here. What you could actually do is just email Fausto first, faustop@ctucorp.com. And then from there, though, let me just ask you, Coldip, and all of our new members here, does any of our new trial members here, only our new trial members, I'm just asking here, anyone use Thinkorswim? Any of our new trial members here specifically use the platform Thinkorswim? Just look to post in the main chat tab there if you can there, Coldip. But if not, then I would suggest thinking about opening up the Thinkorswim account solely to get the Bookmap data. It's $40 a month from Thinkorswim, which is as inexpensive as you're going to get. Just trust me on that. Everything I own. I would tell you that. Thinkorswim, you'll be able to get the data there for about $40 a month. It's definitely the best bet cost-effective wise. They jacked up the price there, Robert. He says 49. He's in Thinkorswim. Maybe they jacked up the price over the last month or so there. A couple months. It was always 39 a month. I guess they raised it because they probably realized, Robert, they were getting away. They were getting robbed there because it's really a great value, regardless, 40 or 49. So they probably thought a little bit more about it and raised up the price there. Not surprising, But still, at $50 a month, that is very inexpensive. I think you're going to be paying like 5 times the price or 4 times the price just, on the main version of Thinkorswim. All right, so folks, let's just go through a couple of different questions otherwise from email, and then we'll to continue this APLD over time because obviously it's still holding here. All right, I'm actually going to jump over to a trade here. Just jump over to a stock, Mara, M-A-R-A, and just to check in, see how it's doing. It's made a nice trend back up pretty nicely across Traders Talk time here. Not terribly surprised. We'll cover at least the real X's and O's of this move in just a moment. But I actually have a journal from a student that I wanted to just go over. It relates to Mara, but I don't have the ability to go back on the exact trades that they took. These trades they'd sent over from July 3rd, July 11th, July 19th. Here we are on the 25th. It's really hard because I don't have access to the level 4 data. So, this student sent me their journal on just a bunch of different trades. And I will say, actually, might I say, this trader has made some good money thus far. So actually allow me to mention their name. Shout out to Jason F., who so far has done pretty nicely thus far. It's his first trading journal. It's on Sim, he said, paper trading. But honestly, I don't care about that because if you're extending your winners a lot better than your losers, like meaning if you're cutting your losers short and you're allowing some of your winners to run pretty nicely, you're going to do pretty well. And that's exactly what Jason did here. Well, hey, it is to say at least that on the Mara trade that Jason wants me to go over, I can't exactly go over the ins and outs that he specifically took, but a couple tips that I can give him that I know will get him out of trouble and other traders here too, of course. Actually, this was really good because Yehuda had asked about this last week, I think just on the side to me, and we were talking about this. So typically going into the market open, you do not want to hold any pre-market trades. Like at 9:10, 9:15 in the morning, I'm pretty much done with pre-market trading if I am trading it to begin with. Pre-market opens as early as 4 a.m. For pretty much most broker platforms, it opens up at 8 o'clock Eastern time, the latest. So even if you start at 8 o'clock, you have about an hour and 10 minutes worth of good prime time trading. A lot of stocks that make a big move in pre-market tend to fizzle out before the open. Well, hey, if stock is up 75% and you're underwater on the position, you're holding it for months on end, you'll wake up one morning, wipe the crust off your eyes, and you see it's up 75%. What are you going to do? You're going to sell. So if you're going to sell, I'd like to think others are going to sell. If others are going to sell, the stock's going to drop. There's no point in holding on to a stock as it's more likely, as there's a higher probability for it to drop. So not only do you want to give the stock a chance to breathe and relax, you want to give yourself a chance to breathe and relax. Say, okay, I'm out of this trade. Are there other stocks that I need to prep for, right? Are there other stocks that are moving that I should be providing my attention towards? Where are the key levels on those trades? That's what you should be doing like much earlier in the morning compared to 9, 10, 9, 15, but no later than that. Like you got to be on your game there, just making sure that you're prepped for the next 4, 5, 6 hours. Robert asking here in the chat, so what about the other levels used here? So are you referring to the APLD trade, Robert, just from before? I'll jump back to that in just a little bit. I want to just go over 1 or 2 things from my student Jason that just sent his journal in, but we're going to jump back to APLD, the other levels there. Now, with just a couple of things, though, it's funny because the journal that Jason had sent, one of the few losses, because he took a lot more wins than losses. So one of the only few losses that he took here is a small, tiny loss, but his entry time is at 9:21 in the morning. So he's saying that, he entered the trade 8 minutes before the open, 9 minutes. Just at that point, I'm hanging back. I'm just kind of sitting on my hands and waiting for the opening bell. And the first 5 minutes of that too. Again, the cyber clock, you don't want to really just jump headfirst into the pool. Wait a little bit, right? All right. So there was another comment that I had. I wanted to just shout to Jason here really quickly, just on his trade. My apologies for the lack of audio right now. I'm just taking a quick look right now because I thought there was some. Oh, here we go. So in relation, this is just more of an abstract comment just across the board. Not every stock is going to move with the stock market perfectly. You know, if you watch the S&P or just watch the SPY for that matter, hey, nice pop right now. Let's take a look. Are we getting a couple good breakouts here? I mean, a stock from this morning, NEO, more of a Chinese stock, but hey, you'd think that this would at least make some sort of respectable move up. Not necessarily the case. Mara is going with it a little bit right now at this pop, but it's not uniform. It's not perfect. We'll take a look like at Shopify. Shopify is doing nothing right now. So one thing to just keep an eye on is that just because the markets are like really making a strong pop, it's not always a full-fledged guarantee you're going to get a strong move in the stock you're trading. And hell, the small cap stocks have little to no correspondence with the SPY. So, you know, for the small cap little stocks that we trade, they're just moving off their own accord, off their own news. So, you know, those just kind of are separate. But even otherwise, just what we just went over, Shopify is down here right now. Take a look at like a stock like GM, you know, car stock, doing nothing right now. An airline like AAL, it's trending up, but it's not making the type of, you know, pop right now. It seems like the SPY is making here, and, you know, nice strong new high. So it's definitely something you want to focus on just in terms of general market movement, but never a guarantee you're going to get consistency between your stock and the markets here. All right, so a couple chats here just coming across the board right now from Debbie saying, hi, class. You folks have any idea if the flashing colors for trades under the Mara chart, as we just had before, have any significance? What Debbie's referring to is time and sales. So let me just show that quickly. Time and sales are the two programs here under the daily chart. Now, these are exactly the two programs we're going to cover actually tomorrow, not to segue this into, you know, going over class again, but tomorrow as we continue our discussion, not just with class, but specifically with volume, we're going to move on from level 3 and we're going to focus on the tape, time and sales. So generally speaking, green, we want to focus on for buying pressure as a stock is running and running upward. Well, the more green that you have, it's showing that orders from the ask are getting hit and broken through. As a stock is dropping, you're more prone to seeing red on the tape, more orders on the bid getting broken through, like potential support. So it takes a little bit longer time, Debbie, to provide a thorough explanation about every color and really the dynamic of buyers and sellers out there. That's where tomorrow it's like a full 60+ minute class specifically on that time and sales. So I would suggest, not just for Debbie, I mean, for any of our trial members right now, I would just suggest for you to get in touch with your education advisor. They'll be able to break down the curriculum and everything that's included with our course. All right, so let me just double check here. Lastly, on the chat right now, we'll jump to YouTube, see if there's any questions coming in from there. And then otherwise, hey, we'll just jump right to email here at this stage. Otherwise, perhaps we'll go to APLD and revisit that. So easy to say, of course, this was prior to Traders Talk beginning, but to continue this, at least from right now, after it rebroke that 980 level, which was yesterday's big, strong resistance, well, that was a clean move up to 10. And thankfully, more than that, it rebroke 10 over time, and this trend continued. So the first test of 10, it failed. And over time, it was holding it. This was a false break. But thankfully, it provided another test to where once it rebroke it again, it made that larger move up. Easy to say that after the fact, but every trade begins with the entry and the attempt of it. So, you know, the more times it nips and gnaws at that big level, you should be getting at least a more decisive, conclusive move. Hell, if it just tanked from 10 there and that was it, well, that's a more decisive, conclusive move. Let's go right to Bookmap here just to see where the big levels are. 11 here that you had. That was an iceberg from pre-market this morning, and now about 22,000 shares on the offer there. Looks like something popped up here, an order. At 1025, looks like that became a bit of a level here, 1025 to like 1027. It was nipping at that before that just broke higher. All right, so let's plot a couple more lines here in the meantime, just at 11. And we'll go 1027, just loosely right there. So if this decides to pull back, then the next support that it would have to test, the first one here, would be off of 1027. And then if it slices under that rather fast, then you're more prone to dropping closer to 10, if not at 10. That's kind of my thoughts on this trade right now. Anything historically on this? Because, of course, this had a big run back from mid-May that we talked about to begin. So it looks like a pretty strong top historically. It's not one exact price level, probably just more of a rough estimate here. 1025 was the high back from late May, 1046. Then here, 1021. So there is a little continuity here between this 1021 high from July 5th and 1025 high back from May 25th. So we'll just say, very loosely speaking, 1020 to 1025. And hell, even here, your open price on this candle, this open price, note the price there, 1028. So all within the same general vicinity, right? So you're really starting to see a little level build out here, roughly around 1020-ish, 1027-ish. I'll mark that as a potential historical level, and we'll see if this area here could hold a support over time over the next hour or so. All right, so let's go through just another email here. So from Jith, this one came in from earlier. Perhaps I covered this. Jith, I didn't see your email just up until right now. So with that, I think I knocked one of these out so far. He was asking about APLD yesterday morning. We'll just take a look at that again from yesterday morning again. Started to make a nice push from 818 to 970. Let's go back to that right there. With no pullbacks in between. Since there's no pullback, how do we make an entry in this case? So that one we did nail. We actually just went over that already at this point. That was a good segue at least, but that 9 level became big support. 904, this yellow, is actually the opening bell print from this given morning. So it's more just the 9 level that became support. Resistance became support. Simple as that. We just gotta, at least, I don't want to say just always be patient and that's it, because it's not just that. It's not just that. If we're too patient, we're going to miss every trade that we look at. But if a stock is not providing the type of entry that we're comfortable with and we're point blank missing a move, well, we have to at least say, okay, how could we jump in on this? Is there an opportunity? How? Well, when a stock breaks above resistance and runs off of it, resistance should initially look to become support. So it didn't happen at 920 at first. It sliced right under 920. It didn't go under and over 920 until after 10 o'clock. So that $9 level was the much better of the two. It broke under and it broke back over. This is a good reminder from Jith here. I wanted to actually go over this, and I did not have this in the back of my head until Jith just typed it to me via email. So Jith wanted me to go over DWAC, though, from last Friday. That definitely we can go over. I don't have the bookmap data, though, for that, unfortunately. So we'll try and make do without it. I'll try and also recite to you what I remember on this just from the back of my head. All right, so DWAC. Let me ask here for all of us here live. Anyone inside our live trading room trade DWAC back from October of 2021? Does anyone recall DWAC back from October of 2021? This was the Trump SPAC company, the special purpose acquisition that President Trump ended up getting involved with, launching Digital World, it's called. You could just take one look at that weekly candle. That was actually over the course of 2 days' time. That thing went from like $18 up to 180. It was like really like a 10x, more than a 10x. Went from basically $10 at the weekly open or right there up to a high of 175. And that's a legit move back then too, folks. Students like Alex and Ray and Yehuda and Kevin, there we go, Kevin in our chat board right now, one of our gold students, Kevin K, saying it's the biggest win he ever had. Kevin, let me just ask you out of curiosity, man, did you trade DWAC back from last Friday with us? Were you here with us on Friday? If not, you missed it, but it's okay. He says yes. Okay, there we go. Just generally speaking, Kev, how'd you do on that trade from last Friday? Because, well, we were actually at our on-site class back when this ran in October of 2021. It was our in-person conference. So, we were going over the whole move at the time. Just I'm on Fausto's platform as we're at this on-site class. So we're trading it, but I wasn't trading my own account at the time, at least at that class. So it flew up personally without my own money in it. So how much, it moved up and all of our students kill it on that trade. Well, it's been a T since. There have been times where the stock has popped in pre-market and it dudded off. A trade or two where I lost money, I'm sure, over the last year. But with it up as active as it was from Thursday after hours into this given morning, what we want to start with is sentiment and hope, right? This company was coming off of news, so there was a catalyst. It's had proven history to make a big run for us. So if we could focus our trades around the cyber clock, and if we can get in on a position around like 9:35 in the morning, 9:40 in the morning, 9:45 in the morning, we have a lot of time until that famed reversal time, right? These are all things that I think about right as the market's opening up here for this trade. So all I'm focused on is buying this stock shortly after it breaks through a big level on the way up. I have to set my stop. But if I do that and it's within prime time hours of trading in the morning, it gives me the best chance. That's all I'm looking for. Now, granted, of course, you see what happened. It popped and then dropped, a little after 10 o'clock. But of course, the more a stock runs and you're not in it already, that's where, of course, you're expecting a pullback, or you're more prone to at least just missing it if it decides to continue popping. Once this broke out off of 17, there was a bit of a concern of myself missing this move. Actually, from the back of my head, as I recall this ended up popping up at first without me. I was just about to jump in here, but it was the first few minutes. I didn't want to break my rule. I feel very impulsive and like a gambler when I break one of my biggest rules. So I'm not going to do that. And unfortunately, it moved up without me. Now, though, it ended up pushing above 18, though, and it popped above that. Well, from 18 bucks, resistance became support just a little over 18. And from that point, there could have been a different level just above 18. I recall just this building really well to where I was calling out support to hold right around here. It generated the entry for myself. And then from that point, once this began to really push up above 19, and seemingly it looks like it just broke the highs here pretty nicely off of like 1930-ish. All bets were off once this broke higher from like 1930-ish. So, Jit's question here is, he was waiting for it to pull back. It popped up quickly at first, and I'd missed that trade initially, Jith. He made an entry, though. He got in at 9:44 in the morning. Maybe I think he meant to write the price 1928. I think he meant 1928. Okay. He got filled at 1928, the price at 9:44. And just, basically, just to cut it short, it just, he got shaken out. Just the next bar, it shook him out pretty quick. It was a rugged shakeout at first there. And then, of course, it ended up pushing up a little bit higher over time. Just simply he was asking, is this the right entry? What should have been the correct entry on this? So the entry time he had was 9:44. So I would say that it seems like this is building out to begin prior to Jith's entry. So it seems like he has his eyes on some sort of a strong level. I can't go back to bookmap that far. So unfortunately, I don't have like the exact levels here at the time. But when Jith's entry is at the candle 9:44, 9:45, basically, it seems like there could have been room for this to try and break higher, right? So the issue on this trade is not just, or I should say, if anything, the issue on this trade simply, I would say, is the liquidity. It's a nice pattern. And if this broke off the highs here and generated the entry, hey, all the more to you. But I do recall at the time, the liquidity was very thin on this trade. So if that's the case, then you have to really look to get that big move quick. Or not only, of course, is it prone to shaking and reversing, but it's just more prone to just shaking. Not reversing, but just damn near shaking around and in and out very, very quickly. Because on a trade like this, let's say if the spread is 10 cents, 12 cents, fluctuating here and there, maybe it tightens up to 5 cents. But then it, still generally, it's like if it's an illiquid stock, then it is more so to say that, hey, if you're trying to set a tighter stop, the probability of you getting shaken out largely increases with this type of order book. So you had your eyes on the right level, it seems like, but the more times it ended up nipping it, well, you eventually got what you wanted, right? So it's not to just say, oh, keep your eyes on this and nothing else. Because what if this doesn't pop? What if this doesn't make this big push here? Well, the more you watch this and it doesn't pop, you are missing out on opportunity elsewhere. So that's where I suggest for anyone, you or other traders, to always have like a group of like 2 or 3 or 4 stocks that you're just like clicking around on your platform, on Bookmap here for reference. Whenever I say on the microphone inside our live trading room, all right, well, just a lot of clicking around right now, a lot of clicking around. Yeah, I'm going through my whole damn page. I don't want you to go through as many stocks as like I am. Like my literal job that Fausto pays me money to do is make call outs for you. That's why I'm following more, like a lot more stocks here. You should be focused on a group of like 2, 3, maybe 4 the most, because at least it gives you a better ability to focus on the finer details of each trade. Meaning, well, of course, this broke out. So I don't want you to just only watch this stock and hope that it makes this pop here, but don't overwhelm yourself. Don't just follow every single other stock that we're calling out in the room. If there's another 2 or 3 that you're already set on and you like from pre-market said, all right, this seems pretty active, I'm sure at some point this will be volatile enough. Well, if you have your lines plotted out for that trade, then stick with that. Meaning, try not to overwhelm yourself with everything out there that's moving, that we're calling out in the room and over text. And yourself, just yank your own leash a little bit. Be like, all right, just focus on a few stocks here. Because again, hey, if you focus on 2 or 3, it gives you the chance to at least keep your eyes on this while you're following others. And thankfully, this does give you another chance to try and retake this trade off of 1928, 1930 or so, and it led to a pretty good move shortly after. Easy to say that after the fact. Hey, if you had missed out from that 1930 and it pops up without you there, well, certainly you're missing out on most, if not the entire move, because you're looking for a pullback. You're not getting it really. And the closer it gets to reversal time, you are thinking, okay, well, eventually this thing should look to pull back or die off at that, not really look to make a better push over time. So this actually reversed a little bit earlier than that famed 1015. It peaked a little bit sooner, and then it pulled back and made the lower highs. Just to wrap up, since the stock was so volatile, I was not keeping stop loss to avoid hitting, and I was just more so manually watching to get out if the price drops. So it's a catch-22 when you're trading such an illiquid stock. It really is. That's the truth of it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts that I could really say otherwise. If you're taking a trade from a clean level, then you should get a more decisive move rather fast. So for me, if it breaks right back under that big level that you take the time to jump in from, that's a red flag right out the gate. So, more often than not, higher probability with that, should that happen, it's going to pull back and shake lower or just not really be ready for you to take that breakout just yet. Right place, wrong time. I'm there at the right place quite often. I'm there at the wrong time quite often myself, though. That's because, quite frankly, we're not perfect with the right time. We're not always going to be able to anticipate the perfect move right there. I might take a false breakout, and then the stock might make the better move in 20 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever the case. Oftentimes, am I there to take that second move? Yes. Are there times where I'm watching other trades, or hell, I'm out of my home office, I'm making a late breakfast and whipping up some eggs? Yeah, I come back and the stock runs without me. Well, that sucks. So, that really is it. And I say this as a blanket statement to any trader here, especially I'll just say a newer trader joining us, or B, someone who hasn't found their footing in terms of consistent profit week over week, day over day. If you find yourself in one of those 2 shoes, then it is for me to tell you that you're going to take trades that you do right on all the way through. With the entry, with, setting the stop, Jith, we do want to set the stop. No manual. We got to make sure that stop is set. Same result happened. So it's just a matter of making sure that that stop is set too. But either way, on this trade, if that was such a big level and you jumped in right above it and you made sure you got out really quick, well, you're doing everything in that case that's right. So if you're taking, let's just say if someone is taking a lot of losses out there, or if they're not winning as frequent, it's going to be easier for you to blend the losses together and say, all right, well, I just lost money here, lost money there. And you might beat yourself up a lot over it. But if you have a great entry and a tight stop, And if it's not making that big move, like, I don't really let it affect me. I don't let it affect my psyche. Not every golfer out there on the tour is going to hit the perfect ball. They're going to hit a, decent ball maybe, and then maybe on the second shot, they'll look to sink it, right? So you can't expect perfection right away. Same to be said here. All right, folks. Hey, I think that we're going to wrap up in just a second or two for right now. Let's just go over a couple last stocks before we finish, just to leave us off with. The APLD is still trucking along. It's just really slow moving now. You can see it's really winded down from the morning session. So unless if it makes a sudden pop really soon up to 11, I'm prone to think you're going to get a test of support down to that 1020-ish, 1025, and perhaps lower. We'll see what happens here if it ends up really shaking soon. Other than that, I guess Mara made a small pop back up right now, but just if this could build support pretty nicely here coming up, if not from 17 and the VWAP, perhaps it could break the highs here pretty soon, roughly off of 1725. That would be a nice continuation, I feel, if this could re-break 25 and go. All right, folks. But hey, for all of us on YouTube right now, hey, I hope you folks enjoyed. If you'd want to join our live trading room, continue the audio commentary throughout this afternoon, just go right to the QR code right as it pops up there. Just scan it with your phone, and you'll be able to get access to our live trading room across this next week. Otherwise, go right down to the link on the green banner below the stream as it's scrolling below there, www.c2.co/trial. My name is Josh Levitan, senior instructor here with Cyber Trading. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me over a quick email. And then otherwise, for any of our students there live right now, well, I'm going to stick around right there. So you know where to find me. Just private chat me if you're Charles, Jith, Bill, Yehuda, Grant, Kathleen, Debbie, Robert, all of us here live. I look forward to talking to you all coming up very soon. Take care.